Hello and welcome to the Small Business Briefing. I'm Brian Calley, the CEO of the Small Business Association of Michigan.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Miller, Vice President of Marketing and Strategic Communications. Thanks for joining us today. We're welcoming a new member on behalf of our sponsor, Consumers Credit Union. And this member is Lynn Medical Instrument Company located in Wixom. So welcome to owner Derek Laviolette and his team. And thanks again to Consumers Credit Union for their sponsorship of our show. All right, so let's dive right into today's topics, starting off with Governor Whitmer's newly formed federal PAC. Brian, what does this new PAC signal?
Yeah, so first, a PAC is a political action committee. So this would be a fund that raises money and then gives it out to candidates that are supported by that political action committee of that PAC. And so individuals can do this. We're used to, like, SBAM has a PAC. We have the Small Business Association of Michigan has a political action committee. We raise money, we support candidates that are pro-small business. So the governor has formed one to get involved in federal races, and not just federal races held here in Michigan, although it could be used for those purposes, for members of Congress here or the United States Senate, that sort of thing. But also the news was that it was for both to support President Biden's reelection, then also candidates from across the country. And this in a video that the governor posted on Monday's launch, it said, we're at a moment, quote, a moment where our fight must stretch beyond Michigan and reach the entire country, unquote. So clearly looking to have an impact across the country. It is called the Fight Like Heck PAC. Heck isn't the word, but in case my grandma's watching, I thought I would just clean it up a little bit. But that was kind of a rallying cry that was used, that the governor used in some of the political activities over the last year. And so this really, I think it signals that the kind of the process of being coy about entering the national stage is over, and it's and the governor's feeling more comfortable in being a national player. Now, usually what happens is that when a governor does this, it does signal looking ahead to the future and kind of building a nationwide network. So when you help people get elected or reelected around the country, then later on, maybe if you're seeking office or up for an appointment or something like that, then you've got the support network that goes beyond just your state. Not terribly unusual for governors, especially governors in their second term, to form political action committees. And so again, not terribly surprising, but actually pretty big news. I think it does signal that that we should expect to see Governor Whitmer on the national stage a little bit more.
All right. Let's talk about Michigan's population a little bit. The Census Bureau provides estimates of population movements in a couple of different ways, but both of these recent reports do confirm population in Michigan is declining overall. But where are we gaining from? And then what states are we losing population to?
Yeah, so keep in mind, for context purposes, Michigan, about 10 million people, and we've been pretty even, but now declining somewhat. So we had a decade of decline from 2001 to 2010, and then we grew a little bit from 2011 to 2020. But during that 20-year period, we were 49th out of 50 in terms of population growth, and so relatively low. And we see that in our congressional representation, only 13 members of Congress now, when it was upwards of 17 a few cycles ago, or a few censuses ago. So that's just for context purposes. 10 million people live in Michigan. We have lost since 2020 43,200 residents, according to census estimates. So the city of Detroit, it estimates a population of 620,000, making it the 29th largest city in the nation. When it was at its well, just let's see, going back to 1998, it was the nation's 8th largest city. So 29th now was 8th largest. Now, in terms of the areas where we're gaining from and we're losing from, because we don't lose everywhere. In fact, we're net inbound from certain states. So some states that we are gaining from as of late, since the pandemic, basically, since the last census was done. New York, a net inbound from New York of about 3,000, a little over 3,000 people, and from Illinois, about 2,600. So I remember when I was in office, our biggest threat was Chicago and Illinois. So like people were really leaving, graduating from college and going to Chicago to find opportunity. Toward the latter half of that decade, we saw a pretty big net inbound people coming back from Chicago. That trend still continues, but we lose even more than we gain with what's kind of referred to generally as the Sun Belt. So 11,000 net loss to Florida. And a few years before that, we've been losing to Florida for a while. So we had seen net loss to Florida that was a little bit bigger before, but still that's substantial. It's the number one place that we lose people to. 4,700 net loss to North Carolina, 3,400 to Texas. So overall, I think it does underscore the challenge that we face, and not just our own demographics. Our demographics are hard enough in that, you know, the average age is older. The number of people starting school and graduating school and entering the workforce is smaller than those that are leaving the workforce every year. And so we really can't afford to lose any. So this would be, I think it needs to be kind of a rallying cry, and also I think a nod to this recent increased emphasis on population growth and turning around our population challenges here in Michigan. It really is long-term number one biggest threat to Michigan's economy and our future economic growth. It's just not enough people.
All right, and talking about the future and economic growth, there is an issue at the Supreme Court that we are very vested in. It's regarding minimum wage and paid sick leave. Can you give us a quick reminder of the issue at hand?
Yeah, this is an issue. I want to make sure that it doesn't fall off your radar screen, because it feels like it's been dormant for a long time. But SBAM has been involved in supporting the 2018 compromise on minimum wage and paid sick leave. It's been working its way through the process, through the courts. The business community and the state, who passed a compromise in 2018, lost at the Court of Claims and then won at the Court of Appeals. So now that question goes to the Supreme Court, where we just wait. We have not heard whether or not the Supreme Court will be taking up this case. We hope that they don't. If they don't take it up, that means that the Court of Appeals decision stands. It means that status quo is where we land. If they do take it up, the Supreme Court does take it up, and they overturn the Court of Appeals, and therefore the 2018 compromise goes away, what automatically goes into place is that minimum wage would, for most businesses, would jump up to $15 an hour, and the tipped wage, and this is where the biggest difference for businesses in the restaurant and hospitality business businesses would feel it the most. It would jump from $3.75 to $3.75, which is the tipped minimum wage, to $11.73 an hour, and then by I think it was 2023 or 2024. By the end of this year or the end of next year, that it would catch back up and equal the regular state's minimum wage. I'm sorry, I said 15, I should have said 12. But because that 12 is going up by inflation each year, it's now, if you go back in time, again, act like the compromise never passed, that $12 went into effect in 2018 or the beginning of 2019. By now it would be up to $13.03, and so that's really the difference that businesses would see. So everybody's minimum wage, according to if the Supreme Court were to overturn the Court of Appeals decision, would jump up to $13.03, except for restaurants that would go from $375 up to $1,173, and then by the end of next year would essentially catch up to the regular minimum wage, and then it would be the same for everybody and at that higher level and adjusted for inflation every year.
So if the Supreme Court does overturn this Court of Appeals decision, how would Michigan stack up to other states relative to the minimum wage and this paid sick leave?
Yeah, this was something I was pretty interested to look up. I didn't know the answer to that question until we're really kind of faced with this. This is a court of final jurisdiction. If they decide against the state's current law and essentially raise the minimum wage overnight, where does this stack us up to others around the country? And tipped minimum wage systems are really more common than having everybody the same across the board. And so there are of 50 states, there are 7 that say that no matter what tip system or not, everybody's minimum wage is the same. So right now, Michigan is in the pool with 43 states, and this would kind of put us with the 7 states that are that do not make a distinction there. So it's a big decision. It would affect everybody some, but the restaurant industry is the one whose entire business model would have to change if the Supreme Court overturns that law. What we're hopeful for, we're going to have essentially 2 bites at this apple. The first we've already weighed in on. We have asked, along with a coalition of many other business organizations, for the Supreme Court to let the Court of Appeals decision stand. That's where we're at right now. So we could essentially win just by the Supreme Court saying we're not going to take it up, we're not going to hear it. That means the existing Court of Appeals decision stands. If they do take it up, then presumably there would be oral arguments, and we'd have another opportunity to weigh in as to why we think the 2018 law ought to stand. And to be clear, the reasons that we think it ought to stand, it's not because of the policy itself, it's just a matter of process. The question is the regular lawmaking process valid when it comes to establishing these procedures, even in cases where something initially made it into the process through a ballot initiative? We think it's very clear. Legislature does have this authority, and that's the argument that we're making. If it's not the case, it's a kind of a remarkable shift away from legislative power. Today we say the legislature has the power to make laws. This would be like an asterisk to that and say, well, the legislature has the power to make laws unless that law originated as a citizen's initiative. And that would just be a brand new thing. We've not really run into a case where the Supreme Court has said, you know what, there's certain types of laws the legislature cannot amend, or at least can't amend in certain timeframes. And we'll see. So we feel confident in our legal case, for sure. We're very pleased that the Court of Appeals was so strongly decided on the side of the business community in this one, but we shall see. This is a new Supreme Court, it's a relatively new Supreme Court, and the philosophical landings on issues like this, especially in balance of powers, and this is definitely a balance of powers issue. I guess we'll wait and see.
All right, we'll definitely keep everyone updated. Let's talk about property trends. Zillow actually put out a report recently, outlining some trends here in Michigan. How does it look?
Yeah, I like that. There's so many different data points, and we can look at different ways of what's happening out there in markets, including real estate, not having to wait for just the way that the government calculates and the intervals that they do it. So Zillow is a company. I don't know, a lot of people watching probably have the app. I like to kind of scroll through Zillow and just see what's happening in the real estate market all over the place. They put out some numbers reports that look state by state and county by county. And as a state, Michigan's average home value this spring was $223,793. The average home sale according to Zillow's report, it was up about 3.5% from the prior year. So what I thought it was interesting that of the sales coming in, 53% are coming in under asking price, and about 30% are still coming in over asking price. I'm not surprised that you've got both of those scenarios, except for maybe the mix between them, that there are that many that are coming under list price. But I would point out, while that's unusual for the last couple of years, it is not unusual for the history of real estate sales, the idea of people listing at a level and being willing to give a little bit. What was also interesting was the towns that had the biggest increases. So Lake Angeles, which is over in Oakland County, year over year increase, average increase was almost $50,000. And then Leland, which is another resort community up north, 47,000, up almost 48,000. Harbert, 43, Northport, 41, Saugatuck, 34. Those are the top 5. And you might notice a theme, property by water. So really increased, really impressive increases. So the overall state came in at I would say kind of a normal-ish 33.5% on their report, but certain communities, and tended to be the resort type communities or communities with major water features, did pretty well. And among the top 50 cities in the report, there were 14 of them in the metro. It's funny to call it this way, the Metro Traverse City area, the Metro Traverse City area. Actually, it has grown a lot up there. 10 of them in the Grand Rapids area. There were like Oakland County was featured in the Lansing area. Some communities around Lansing also did pretty well, but really it was the West Coast and that Northwest corner in terms of increases. Really, really hot market still.
All right. Now let's talk about our state's business tax climate. There's a new report out from the Tax Foundation. So where does Michigan stand?
Yeah, for those of us who follow rankings and overall competitiveness on like core issues like taxes, the Tax Foundation, which is housed in DC, is kind of like the gold standard. This is the thing that this is the index that is highly, highly credible, that where you stack up on that, and the way that they calculate it, the way that they determine the rankings and systems, they're really pretty different. The way that states tax what's in, what's out in different tax bases, it's hard to compare, but the way that they index these things at the Tax Foundation, highly credible and kind of the gold standard in these rankings. So Michigan's Business Tax Climate Index, we came in dead even, so 25th out of 50. So pretty decidedly average in terms of where we stand. And that ranking, as we look at different aspects of our standing for business taxes, I think that if you were to look back, it's interesting because Michigan has not been raising our business taxes in terms of the broad taxes. But there was a time when our ranking back, back in 2011 or 12 was top 10. Michigan made a really big move at that point. But then what started happening was if you're standing still, you're falling behind. So other states keep on moving, refining, trying to get competitive. And I think since the pandemic, especially as states have been kind of flush with cash, some have seen ways to make bigger moves in terms of lowering the cost of doing business. I thought it would be. I went to the Tax Foundation's website just to look, where are the top ones, the top indexes. The top 10: Wyoming, South Dakota, Alaska, Now, states that do have oil are able to make royalties off the oil and tend to be able to tax less in other ways when they have those types of natural resource royalties. Florida coming in at number 4, Montana, then New Hampshire, kind of famously the New Hampshire's corporate tax has always been one of the top contenders. But with Florida more focused, like sales tax is a huge driver there. Property tax is a little bit higher there, but on the but no income tax, and they're able to really grow without even using incentives. Nevada, a little different, with Nevada with the gaming revenue, then the top 10 rounded out by Utah, Indiana, and North Carolina. So no real surprises on that. So Michigan coming in right in the middle. Now the bottom 10, New Jersey starting at number 50, climbing up to 41. New Jersey, New York, California. The bottom 3, no surprise, very high tax states: Connecticut, Maryland, then Minnesota, Vermont, Hawaii, Rhode Island, and Alabama. So those, and then of course Michigan kind of being in the middle. You could make a pretty solid argument probably for the middle, although it's kind of it is that balance between investing in public services and not pricing yourself out of the market. Although it doesn't lend itself well to slogans, like we're average.
Oh, that was a good one, Brian. We're average. All right. So we're not going to do an official Data Monday this week, but you do want to outline some of the items that we anticipate being released this week, so people can maybe prepare for next week's discussion. Let's start with those.
Yes, I just wanted to share. There's a lot of stuff coming out this week, so I just wanted to share some of those with you and give you something to look forward to as we come up to a week from today when we do our next Data Monday. We'll really at that point focus a lot on inflation. So that's the most anticipated of the releases this week, being inflation. You can see here what it was in the previous, what it's estimated to be, and the date that it comes out. So we'll see the overall CPI along with the core CPI, the consumer price index, inflation numbers. As you can see, analysts are expecting that that core consumer price index is going to be down a little bit. So you might remember that the core is higher than the overall because the commodities are lower, but those non-commodity items have been kind of stubbornly high. Retail numbers will come out, so we'll get a sense for overall retail sales, and then some of the initial jobless claims as well. The initial jobless claims, even though there's still hiring happening, there's also job shedding happening in certain industries. It'll give us a pretty good idea of whether or not, again, is the economy still kind of even Steven holding up, or is it, or are we starting to give some? And then the U of M's consumer sentiment index is due to come out too. So we always have these analyst numbers and the expectations that are set ahead of time, and we'll see how close they are. But I actually, I'll be surprised if we don't show a little bit of additional progress in inflation. So it has really been a slog to try to get those numbers to come down. But I have believed, and I continue to believe, when you look under the hood of these numbers, that that all the things that are supposed to happen when these aggressive monetary policies are changing, they are happening. They're just happening slow, but they're happening in the right order, and that gives me some confidence that we will continue to head in the right direction as it relates to inflation. And then the bigger question, will the slowdown, or will the slowdown that is kind of forced to keep inflation in check, will it bring us into a recession or not? And so far, the economy has been pretty resilient, but definitely a few signs. So big week for data, and we will make sure to cover all of that and more robustly a week from today.
And we will also see you back here a week from today. We've mentioned several times that this Thursday is our big annual meeting and small business summit. So we will be taking the day off from a live briefing. Again, you can join us in Lansing on Thursday if you're so inclined. Have a great week, and we will see you back here next Monday.
Thanks, everybody. See you on Monday.